Hey, Vice Christian Reformed Church. I want to continue thinking today about the Trinity. But I want to start by thinking back to about the 12th century when a young Scot named Richard traveled to join an abbey just outside of Paris, France, the Abbey of St. Victor. And while he was there, he dedicated his entire life to contemplating about God. And particularly, he spent a lot of time thinking about the Trinity. Richard argued that if God were just one person, he could not be intrinsically loving, because for eternity before creation, he would have had no one to love. Richard went on to say that God could not be two. He could not be a duality, because then God would be exclusive, a divine clique, right, of so absorbed in loving two people loving each other that everyone else would be ignored. There would be no need for anyone else. But, said Richard, when the love of two is perfect and healthy, it is shared. It does not remain within them. And so the Father and the Son have in all eternity delighted to share their love and joy and to share it through the Spirit. So it isn't that God becomes sharing, but that God being triune is sharing at his very nature. Sharing love is the foundation to who God is, argued Richard. God's love has never been for keeping, but for sharing. And the reason I say this is because it really helps us understand two Greek words that are at the core of a lot of Trinitarian theology. And these two words are hypostasis and ekstasis. Hypostasis, hypo means under, and stasis means something which stands or exists. In other words, a good translation for hypostasis is foundation, what is foundational. So in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3, it says, "The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being." But that word being is actually hypostasis. So the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of God's foundation, the foundation of who God is. So you see Jesus, you see exactly the foundational essence of who God is. So hypostasis describes the Father's being, or what is foundational to him. The second Greek word that helps us understand the Trinity is the word ekstasis. It's where we get the word ecstasy. And it refers to being outside of yourself, right? So when we have an ecstatic experience, right? Ecstatic joy or ecstatic pleasure, it feels like we're outside of ourselves with it. It's just, we're overwhelmed, we're beyond us. And that's because ek means out of, and stasis again means something which stands or exists, or the foundation of. So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit have their hypostasis in their ekstasis, or God's foundation is outgoing, is life-giving outwards. This is the foundation of who God is. So Trinity is an ecstatic God. He does not hoard life for himself, but intrinsic to who God is God giving away his love. So to quote a theologian, Michael Reeves, the Father finds his very identity in giving his life and being to the Son, and the Son images his Father by sharing his life with us through the Spirit. Now you might ask, why does this matter? Why does it matter to know about hypostasis and ekstasis and the foundation of God is life-giving? Why does this matter? Well, it's simple, because your view of who God is shapes who you are as a Christian. It's as simple as that, really. James K. Smith says, you become what you worship, and this is 100% true. You become what you worship. So if you worship an ecstatic, life-giving God, you will become an ecstatic or life-giving person. When Jesus said, "They will know you by your love," this is what he was talking about. He was saying you become what you worship, and if you worship God, you will become loving like God. But if you worship a policeman God, you'll become a meter-maid Christian. If you worship a distant creator God, you will become a philosophical or cognitive Christian. So knowing God is Trinity, and knowing that the foundation of Trinity is ecstatic or sharing out of love, then knowing that the image of the Trinity is best explained in Jesus, that Jesus is this ecstatic hypostasis. And then we worship this life-giving Jesus. That same ecstatic joy that Jesus has in his life will become ours because we become what we worship. This is why good theology matters.